What the hell are we supposed to use, man? Harsh language?
Beverly Hills Cop, the original from 1984.
Mm-hmm.
In this month's segment of Make Marvin Watch.
Yep, and watch I did.
I want to say I was surprised you haven't seen this, but I'm never surprised anymore.
Yeah.
Eddie Murphy is a Detroit cop on vacation in Beverly Hills.
This is really at the height of Eddie Murphy's powers.
This was the start.
Well, it's very hard to determine what the start and end was, because the period between him being on SNL and all these movies was like a span of a very few years. Like,
this was his first movie that premiered #1 at the box office of 7 in a row following.
yes, but I'm just saying in terms of like getting offers and being in actual films, he went
Sure.
from SNL to movie stardom like very quickly, like overnight. You know, he obviously shot into the spotlight because of SNL. Some would argue that he's solely responsible for revitalizing the show in a time where it was sort of lackluster. And then everybody wanted him in movies. So, you know, just looking through some of his credits, you know, again, within the span of a couple of years after the SNL stardom, you have 48 Hours, which was his first. Then you got Trading Places. You got Beverly Hills Cop, The Golden Child, which is not a very...
I guess I would agree. This is peak Eddie Murphy.
This is peak. There's like, this is...
But the peak lasts for a long time. It's not like it peaks up and goes down. Like, he goes up and he stays there for a while.
Well, yeah. I mean, after the 80s, you got other big movies in the 90s, like The Nutty Professor and Dr. Dolittle.
Yeah, he went away from some of the grittier adult movies into some of the more softer family-friendly stuff.
And, you know, and this movie in particular, and some of his bigger movies, those like first 3 to 4 movies he did, these are even before his huge stand-up specials like Raw. Raw was 1987. So this movie had...
Delirious was like 83. So
yes, right.
Mm-hmm.
So...
that was a good one.
Oh, yeah, for sure. My dad, I actually found out, my mom and dad actually saw him on the tour for Raw.
Wow.
And I didn't, and my dad mentioned it to me once, like so casually. I was like, what are you talking? I was like, you realize it's like the biggest comedy tour like ever. Probably.
That's amazing.
So they saw him at Madison Square Garden, I think.
Wow.
But yeah, so again, this is him at like that peak of stardom. And, you know, they obviously sought him out for a very specific role, which he pretty much plays in every movie.
They didn't.
What do you mean?
For this movie?
No, you're not listening. I'm saying seeking out Eddie Murphy, you're looking for a specific type of character from him. You're looking for him to do the Eddie Murphy thing. And one of the unique things about this movie is the fact that Martin Brest was the director. Martin Brest later in his career was known for way more dramatic films, and this being an action comedy and a vehicle for like Eddie Murphy's comedy first, as I just said, Martin Brest's like dramatic skill set made this movie, I think, better than it would have been without a director like that. Like if it was just a standard comedy or a standard action movie, it's just a movie with Eddie Murphy, but a lot of the more dramatic stuff in this movie, I think, made it a little bit more compelling, personally.
Yeah, but the story of this movie is fascinating in of itself.
Sure is, yeah.
Michael Eisner, who was heading Paramount Studios at the time, for some reason, still had some beat-up old station wagon that he owned when he lived in New York, and he was driving it around Beverly Hills, and he got pulled over. And he was treated with such disdain because of the shape of his vehicle and car. Like he like made it a point, and this is 1975.
Right.
Made it a point to say, I'm going to make a movie about how clean and disdainful the Beverly Hills police department are because they're so much better than this rough and tumble stuff. And for 10 years, he'd been receiving scripts and rejecting scripts until he finally got one in 1983. And this was written for Sylvester Stallone.
Interesting.
Oh, glad that he passed
the
out.
guy they killed in the beginning, Michael Tandino, it was supposed to be Sly Stallone's brother. And then he's going to go to Hollywood, and the girl's going to be his love interest. And he allegedly quit because he didn't think that audience would believe that a rough and tumble Detroit detective would go to Beverly Hills and be out of his place. And he didn't like the comedic value. He wanted to be action and stuff, so he quit.
Yeah.
And so Bruckheimer convinced Eddie Murphy, like, this role is perfect for you. And they had an amalgamation of all the scripts he'd ever gotten, and they just roughed it together. And when they were doing it, if they ran into roadblock, they let him ad lib it. There was so much improvisation in this movie.
Oh, you could tell
that it's ridiculous.
And that's like, and again, that's the Eddie Murphy thing, right?
Right.
That's like, so real quick, let's just give a little plot refresher, and then I'm going to toss it over to Marvin to hear his thoughts on it, because, this is Eddie Murphy starring as Axel Foley, a Detroit cop, kind of new to the gig, not a veteran cop, and he's pissing. He's pissing people off. You got that fucking, the stereotypical angry police chief fucking tossing papers and yelling and shit. But Axel Foley...
Guy was an actual Detroit police detective.
I think I do know that, actually.
What? The old black dude?
Gilbert R. Hill.
Inspector Todd, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
He's like president of the city council after that, too.
And Axel Foley will not cut corners, but he goes to some extreme measures to get the job done, and he costs the city of Detroit.
Well, it's like
grew up in a rough neighborhood with rough friends, and they did some illegal stuff.
Yeah.
He went down the cop route.
Yep.
Somehow. Still has his ways about him, though.
Yep.
It's like the typical cop, though, that like fucks everything up in the city and then gets yelled at.
Yeah.
Like, that happens in every
cop movie, right?
Cop comedy, like Bad Boys. They did the same shit, fucked the city up.
Yep. And he Axel reconciles with one of his buddies, as Dusty mentioned, from growing up, who unfortunately got into some trouble with the law. He stole some bonds from a bad guy, gets murdered, and Axel takes a little trip to Beverly Hills to try to solve the case. And in Beverly Hills, we meet some other cops. Judge Reinhold, Detective Billy Rosewood, John Ashton as Sergeant Taggart. We got Ronnie Cox, Lieutenant Bogomil, and some other characters in there. Marvin, did you notice your boy?
I noticed my boy, Mike.
Jonathan Banks as a young man.
Still working for the bad guy.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Didn't work out for us so much this time.
So
No.
Mike's accuracy in this was not hidden like it was. in
Nah, he
Breaking
was-
Bad,
nah.
I'll tell you that.
Nah,
And
he
why is he
Yes.
always a bad guy?
I don't know.
Saw him in Sanford and Son. Think he robbed a bank.
He was in Sanford and
shit.
Son?
Yeah, he was
Oh,
super
damn.
young, super young.
He's got that
In
face.
this, he's a murdering
He's been acting
henchman,
since the 70s.
right?
So
and in Breaking Bad, well,
Oh, yeah. We
you can
know
only
about
be
that.
so good working for Gus.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, Mike's the man. We all know that.
Yeah.
But
Axel had to put him down.
I remember specifically, too, around the time when I had watched Breaking Bad for the first time, and then, like, you're introduced to Mike. At some point, I had just happened to be watching Beverly Hills Cop, and I was like, oh, fuck. That's Mike.
Wow. Yeah.
He's almost unrecognizable, but not really once you see his face.
Almost.
With the
Yeah.
hair. The hair does a big
It's
thing.
the hair. Yeah.
But go ahead, Marvin. What did you think of this? Your first viewing. Obviously, you're not unfamiliar with Eddie
First
Murphy,
viewing.
but
I love Eddie Murphy, so I
Yeah.
was excited to watch this. Another very 80s film,
yep.
and it was also Dusty's pick again
At
for
least,
to make Marvin Watch. I'm sensing a trend here
you didn't have any CGI to deal with this time.
with the 80s. Yeah.
One of the great things about some of those older movies is they didn't have CGI, so
Right.
like they had to do the real stunts, so it looked a little more real
Right. Yeah.
and raw.
So yeah, they started off. He was doing like a little undercover cop thing, right? Smuggling
Yeah,
some
he was
cigarettes.
he was trying to get somebody to
Sting.
buy
Yeah.
$5,000.
$5K for that big ass truck full of cigarettes.
Single pack
Inflate-
of Marlboro Reds is $5,000 right now.
Inflation is a motherfucker, ain't
Oh,
it?
yeah,
Good
oh, yeah.
lord.
Get a pack of
those
cigarettes
cigs now going for
for less
$20K.
than $1.
And
And
buy
less
the
than
bucks.
$1 back then.
And the hotel room was only like $200 a night, even though he got the reduced rate.
In Beverly Hills,
In
yeah,
Beverly
right.
Hills, yeah.
Insane. When he first got to Beverly Hills, the scene where he's walking by the two guys in the leather outfit is funny
Oh yeah.
because he wears that same type of thing in his first
Yeah.
stand-up special.
Well, that's
So
the. I think
that's like an
that's
Easter
the
egg
joke.
of
Yeah.
sorts.
Yeah. He
Yes,
looks
yes.
back and laughs.
It's a joke.
Yeah.
He stops and grabs his gun for a second. It's great. There's so much comedic value, not even in just the dialogue, in the way that Eddie Murphy composes himself.
Oh, he's so
It's
good.
just hilarious.
Yeah.
There
like
are-
when he first gets to Beverly Hills and checks in and gets that deal, the
Yeah.
whole spiel he gives about like Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
And-
moments. Sorry,
Go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, finish because I have different.
Well, I
thoughts.
was just gonna say, he he only says niggas once in the whole movie, and I was surprised.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Just 80s things in general, because I noticed this while I was watching Fletch as well. The stuff that you were able to like get away with back then,
Yeah,
so fucking crazy compared to now, and not in a better or worse way, just different.
yeah,
It's so jarring that like in Fletch, like this dude, like like even in this movie, they made a lot of like gay jokes and stuff, things
Oh,
that
yeah.
would just like never fly in today's in this day and age. And again,
Right.
that's not to say better or worse. It's just different.
it just is what it. Yeah,
Yeah, it just is what it is. Times have changed. I found that a lot of like his comedy, and it makes sense because Richard Pryor was such an influence to him. It's why he got into comedy. And
yeah.
his like brand of comedy is as was Richard Pryor's, like sort of very much like a
Very real, very raunchy.
Yeah, but it's a somewhat of a commentary on like the times and like.
Yeah,
And there were moments in the movie too where they play off of that, like police brutality in LA specifically, because you know the LAPD has had a long history like about like police brutality and stuff like that. One thing I didn't
Yeah.
realize is fucking my boy Bronson Pinchot. I can't pronounce his last name, but Serge is in this, and Serge is actually in the third one. He reappears, and he is so fucking funny.
Wait, which character?
He
Which
was the-
character
he
is
was
that in
the-
this?
He was
The
the
guy that
secretary.
can make the espressos, yeah, and sold he sold the
He
get
was so
out of
funny.
here.
Yeah.
No, I'm not fucking with
Yeah,
you.
if it's not too much trouble, no, don't be stupid.
Yeah.
Don't be fucking stupid. Love that dude.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
great. He wants to take them to a bar, right?
Yep, the
He's
strip
like,
club.
you know, well, he does. They don't know it's a strip
Yeah,
club.
yeah.
He's like, I found the perfect place for you guys. It's very conservative. You'll love it.
Yeah.
Next thing you see is fucking titty swinging. This is fucking titty bar, right?
Yep.
And that shit
Yep.
was hilarious.
And that's
And
also
when they get into that club, you know, they spot the two guys that are about to. I guess they're about to rob it or something.
Yeah,
they
yeah.
got shotguns.
mm-hmm.
Yep.
When he's walking up on that guy, you mentioned Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
And Eddie Murphy is known for his good Richard Pryor impression.
Mm-hmm.
And he does that. He's talking like that. Like that's how Richard Pryor.
Oh, when he was
talks.
drunk?
When he's talking up to
Yeah,
that guy,
yeah,
it
yeah.
sounds just
Yeah.
like his Richard Pryor impersonation.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking funny.
That's also the moment of the movie during that scene when like, you know, part of the plot is that like, oh, Axel Foley, he's not a good cop. He's just a fucking reckless type of
Right.
guy. That's the moment of the movie where the plot sort of turns and these guys realize like, oh wow, he
He's
actually
a great cop.
is
Yeah.
a really good cop, and maybe we should like listen to him a little bit about what's going on
Mhm.
here.
Right.
One of the things that I found impressive, and I guess I noticed it now because it's been a really long time since I've seen the movie, but also, you know, for the purposes of the show, I watch things differently. So now sometimes that we're going to talk about because I've got, you know, we're talking about it and I'm trying to like pick it apart a little bit in detail. But
Yeah.
one of the things I never really noticed and I thought was super impressive was that there are times where like Eddie Murphy has the ability to go from like the comedy guy and he like flips it into like a serious manner.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that part of it is credit to him being like a pretty good actor, but also again, as I mentioned, the director Martin Brest is probably some
Right.
of his direction, and
Probably.
that really you could tell like the dramatic moments, the tense moments. Excuse me, when he's like confronting the bad guy in the movie. I don't even remember the fucking dude's name.
Victor Maitland.
Victor Maitland.
That's right.
Jonathan Banks' character, Zach, the hitman.
hmm
So I thought that was really impressive as well.
Yeah, I like that switch.
Yeah. Or when he's harassing the security guard guy at the warehouse, he's like,
Oh
"You're the
my
fucking
God.
problem. Go get your supervisor now.
I can
Now."
have 25 agents down here in 15 minutes.
Yes.
This guy gave me a book of matches.
The one guy calls him out, and he's like,
Yeah.
he's like, "Don't you need a warrant for that?" He was like, "I can't believe you just said that."
Yeah.
Got a big mouth.
I also enjoyed that too. That like again those little signs that he is like a really good cop, like figure like noticing like why are there coffee grounds that I'm smelling? Oh well, coffee grounds are used to cover up drugs for dogs, drug sniffing dogs, and all this.
It was
stuff.
a very good detective movie. Like everything he did to get to the conclusion was within like the realm of plausibility. Like this guy came to town, he meets the bad guy, doesn't really know anything. He's just trying to find it out and gets thrown out of a plate glass window. I mean, what's the charge for getting shoved out of a car? Jaywalking?
What kind of self-sabotaging shit? Like, just take him out the door. You don't got to bust up your own glass window.
Well, that was.
But then you see that it's like so that he can get arrested and all this shit.
Yep.
But that was the scene in the movie where I was surprised to see that like, times haven't really changed all that much. Like this guy's they're arresting him for nothing. For being black, really, if you want to just say
it's because he was snooping around, really.
Well, no, because when the cops showed up, they didn't know. They just got a call about.
I'm sure the cops.
Well, I
were
think
called,
the cops were in on it from
when he got
Maitland.
thrown through the window. It was obvious who was calling. They were calling about. I mean,
well, they weren't in on it. They just showed up, and because when he got taken in, they were like, "Oh, you got disorderly conduct." and like making a
not
ruckus.
necessarily in on it, but Maitland, there's a
he knew what he was doing.
And they told him a story that he jumped through the window.
But
so.
there's some guy in our office making a mess and tearing shit up, and then they throw him through the window right when the cops roll up. It's pretty convenient, Oh, that's the guy,
Yeah, but that's what I found interesting is like the cops didn't even like let the dude tell his story. It wasn't until they found out that he was also a cop.
There's a couple questionable plot devices, like the not that it matters anymore because we already have it, but when Bogomil is trying to find them, and he's like, is he? I forget where he asked where they're at, but they're like, no, they track the car. They use GPS to track the car. That technology didn't exist yet.
I was like, wait,
it did not exist in 90. That was a literal plot device just to move it forward. Like, oh yeah, he said Victor Maitland says, oh yeah, that was. So, there's a couple of things like that where but it doesn't really ruin the movie.
The 80s is just like
it's got everything
chock full of iconic shit.
Yeah.
Very powerful decade for pop culture. True. Yeah, I don't know. Looking back on a movie like this, it's still just as like that's like, and that's the thing that's kind of where I was going with that question. Like, this is a timeless movie. What was funny then is still just as funny, even though like the times have changed so drastically. And I think that's a big credit to Eddie Murphy and his delivery of a lot of these things, right? Like hearing like something like borderline homophobic or borderline racist and stuff like can only be funny coming out of the mouth of like a brilliant comedian like Eddie Murphy. That's one of like things about
when he was telling the black cop that he was acting white. He
sounded too white.
With the white guy.
Oh my God, that was so fucking
I'm gonna fall for the banana in the tailpipe.
Yeah, that was hilarious. You've been hanging out with this guy for too long.
I mean, those jokes land though. Like that's funny.
Yeah, but they only land coming out of the mouths of certain people. It's criticism that is currently happens today with what we talked about, I think, last episode about how like, well, maybe not in a podcast episode, but we definitely talked about it, just like comedy in general and how like there's a lot of criticism against comedy, that comedy is supposed to punch up, not punch down, to which I agree. And that sometimes like racist jokes or homophobic or transphobic jokes can't be funny, to which I disagree. They can be funny when you go into it, but also they have to be funny. Yes.
It can't just be you like ranting about your bullshit as thoughts and that's one of
beliefs,
right?
Yep. And that's one of the criticisms against Dave Chappelle, right? Because Dave Chappelle's been on his like trans joke kick for like his past 5 specials.
He's almost obsessed.
And it's like,
at this point.
I don't know, the last special I was like, this wasn't even funny. So it's like, when you're not being funny, like, what are you doing? But I don't know. I mean, for my money, probably I would say one of the better comedy, again, subjective, but one of the better comedies of the 80s.
Definitely.
One of the best comedies of all time.
I was also thinking about it. Now, I want to ask you guys, is this my favorite Eddie Murphy movie? Because there are
No.
some good ones.
I think Trading Places was probably better
I was-
for 80s.
Yes.
I was
But
going to
then
say,
I think for me, probably Nutty Professor is probably, I enjoyed it more.
Nutty Professor
personally.
is pretty iconic, especially for our age group. It came out like right around the time we were kids.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm more biased towards Trading Places and
But for
Beverly
80s,
Hills
Trading
Cop.
Places was better for me.
Trading
I
Places
agree.
is probably my favorite Eddie Murphy
It's so
movie.
But
funny.
again, we're talking about peak Eddie Murphy. He could not make a bad movie.
Yeah.
For like
Right.
those first 7 movies were
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
pretty good.
But yeah, that's Beverly Hills Cop. It would go on to get 2 sequels, now a third.
Mm.
Both of which are,
No, the
Not-
second one is great. It's not as good, but it's great.
Okay.
I like
I'll
the
watch the
third
second
one,
one.
but it's not a good movie.
No, the third one is just mediocre. It's not.
Yeah.
Like it's a curve down. Like
Mhm.
first one's the best. Second one is good, but not as good. And the third one's just
You know what's a great Eddie Murphy
a
movie
little too cheesy.
that I forgot about? Bowfinger with Steve Martin. That's a great movie.
Yep.
Final thoughts here. This is a movie that is on IMDb at a very high 7.3 rating.
I give it a 7. All in all, I think it was pretty funny. I don't think there was anything too special plot wise.
No, I mean it's pretty standard like
But
cop.
it was a good blend of police shit and some great comedy. So
Yeah. I would agree. I'll round up and give this I'll round up, give this a 7.5 based off of its
Dusty's coming in with the big 8.
oh yeah.
No, it's
Look
getting
at
a
him.
9.
He's rocking.
9.
He's
Okay.
Getting a
Oh
9.
my God.
Highest.
This is how high as a rating
Yeah.
as I'll ever give a movie.
That
because
is insane.
I don't think.
I don't even think he gave
think
Top Gun a
10
9.
No.
10 out of 10 is an impossible. You can't make a perfect movie. It's impossible. There's always going to be, you can pick at some stuff and say, yes, yes, yes.
Right.
I don't think there's a perfect movie. So 9 out of 10 is probably about as good as it gets.
Yeah.
And this is one of them. And it's one of the greatest movies of all time in my book for the reasons I listed.
Mhm.
It's hilarious. I've probably seen it 100 times and I can still laugh at it every time I wasn't even watching it today because I watched it last month because we were supposed to do it last month, but we booted it to this month.
Yeah.
I actually was just listening to it today just to refresh myself and because I was doing other things,
Right.
finishing up news and whatnot. But I
Right.
was just, and it's just hilarious.
Yeah.
And we said Trading Places. I actually just forgot completely about Coming to America. That might be my
That's
favorite
another great
80s.
Coming to America is
Coming.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was I don't remember what I was gonna say, but yeah, there you have it, folks. That's our thoughts on Beverly Hills Cop, and specifically Marvin's thoughts at his first time watching it. Imagine that.
Imagine
You're racking up the numbers now, Marvin. You're doing
that. Ooh,
work.
my
Yep.
catalog is so vast.
It's getting big.
Yeah.
Did this spark you to want to watch Beverly Hills Cop 2 and 3? Do you think?
Well, now that I heard that 3 isn't great, maybe not 3, but 2.
3's
I would
not
probably
bad. It's just not fantastic. It's still funny because it's fucking Eddie Murphy.
Yeah. It's Eddie Murphy doing Eddie Murphy thing. It's just a little cheesier, a little less realistic. They get a, it's like Fast and Furious. Once you film like 12 of them, you're like,
Right.
all right, they're flying cars in space. They're jumping them from planets.
Yeah.
All right. We get it.
Right. We got to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for listening and watching. If you haven't already, check out our website, harshlanguage.tv. You can see a catalog of all our past episodes on the podcast and YouTube videos. And while you're at it, visit our YouTube channel.
Do it.
And consider subscribing. And you can see shortened versions of our podcast reviews as well as other content that don't make it to the weekly episodes. So thanks again for hanging out, and we'll catch you next week.
Asta.